Stop right there. If you think you've heard every possible cheating story, think again. What I'm about to tell you is not what you expect. It's deeper, more intense, and it will make you question everything you thought you knew about infidelity, forbidden confessions, and the limits of desire. And trust me, once you start listening, you won't be able to stop, just like I couldn't. Before we dive into this insane, real story of infidelity, I need you to do something important. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever felt a desire so overwhelming that stopping was never an option? I bet you have. And if you're curious to know what happens next, stay with me, because this story, it's just getting started. Cheating in marriage is one of the biggest taboos in any relationship, but often, desire overpowers the line between right and wrong. Have you ever stopped to think how temptation can slip into the most unexpected moments of your life? Imagine being in such a vulnerable place that a simple exchange of glances could lead to a decision that changes everything. This is the kind of story many prefer to keep secret, but when exposed, it brings to light the complex emotions and consequences of infidelity. You might be thinking, how could this happen to someone so focused and balanced? The truth is, betrayal doesn't choose the moment nor the ideal situation. What starts as a momentary weakness can turn into a game of seduction where desire mixes with guilt, and the line between right and wrong becomes blurred. What do you do when you find yourself trapped between love, desire, and shame? This story reveals the darker side of choices many people try to hide, but deep down, we've all wondered, how far would you go for a forbidden desire? In this account, what seemed like simple temptation transforms into an internal battle of emotions, and you'll understand how every decision can have repercussions that go far beyond what you imagine. So, prepare for a cheating story that will make you reflect on how far choices, desires, and betrayals can take us. Alexia found herself in a vicious cycle where financial pressure took over her mind every day. With 3 months of overdue rent, the feeling of sinking was constant. Her biggest concern wasn't the bills, but the looming phone calls from her boss, Mr. X. Until recently, their interactions had been direct, simple, and purely professional. However, something had changed. It was as if there was a tension in the air, an invisible line between them becoming increasingly hard to ignore. What confused her even more was the way he looked at her, his gaze descending over her figure as if he saw something beyond the simple employee she was. Every time he said her name, Alexia felt a shiver. She couldn't tell if it was discomfort or something more. The professionalism of their relationship was dissolving, giving way to something she couldn't define. It was a game she hadn't chosen to enter, but now it seemed impossible to avoid. That afternoon, the tension was even more palpable. She was alone in the office when Mr. X walked in, his words loaded with something else. She knew he wasn't just there to discuss the overdue payment. He wanted something more, something she felt she shouldn't offer. But at the same time, the situation made her afraid of losing everything. It was a familiar feeling, that mix of anxiety and desire, an infidelity story she feared living, but one that was already beginning to seem inevitable. Mr. X wasted no time. With a subtle smile, he began talking about Alexia's overdue rent, but his words weren't what she expected to hear. Instead of simply questioning the payment, he began to suggest, in a disguised way, that maybe there was something she could do to resolve the situation. His tone left no room for doubt. He wasn't just talking about money. There was something more behind it, a veiled request she couldn't ignore but at the same time didn't want to understand. Alexia felt uncomfortable. He didn't directly say what he wanted, but his body, his posture, his glances, everything pointed to the same thing. It was a proposal disguised as a solution, like someone who knows how to play the game. He suggested that the payment of her debt be resolved in a way she knew she shouldn't consider. She felt a chill as she realized he was being deliberately vague, so she could make the decision on her own without him having to commit. But this suggestion hung in the air like an unspoken confession. Alexia's mind was in turmoil. She knew what was being suggested was wrong, but the pressure was intense. If she accepted, everything would change. If she said no, her financial situation would worsen even further. The idea of giving in seemed simple in theory, but the weight of the decision was crushing. Something inside her wanted to say no, that this was something she should never consider. But the temptation to resolve everything quickly, without further complications, seemed to grow stronger. The tension between Alexia and Mr. X grew. What started as a simple suggestion was turning into something she could no longer control. When he approached, something inside her gave way. She knew it was wrong, but the way he looked at her, the way his presence invaded the space around her, made everything harder to resist. The unspoken desire was there, growing, and she didn't know how to stop it from taking over her thoughts. Alexia's hesitation was visible, but paradoxically, the feeling of being in danger seemed to attract her even more. She was in an internal conflict, morality fighting against feelings that arose even without her permission. She wanted to step back, wanted to shout that this wasn't right. But instead, her eyes stayed fixed on his. Days later, Alexia received a message from Mr. X, something she hadn't expected. He wanted to resolve what had been left unfinished, what had hung in the air between them. When she read his words, a wave of anxiety swept through her body. The text was simple, but carried a deep emotional weight. He was struggling with his feelings, and more than that, he couldn't get Alexia out of his head. He admitted it plainly. He asked if she felt the same. Reading the message, Alexia didn't know how to react. He had exposed himself in a way that left her even more confused. And then, before she could even process her emotions, the moment took an unexpected turn. The door opened. Alexia's husband walked into the courtyard, his expression frozen in shock. The scene before him was like a nightmare unfolding in real time. Alexia standing too close to Mr. X, both with eyes locked onto each other. Her husband's reaction was immediate, a mix of disbelief, betrayal, and heartbreak. And just like that, the forbidden confession turned into something much more dangerous. The consequences of infidelity and cheating? They had only just begun. Now that you've delved into this shocking story of infidelity, it's time to reflect. What would you do if you found yourself in a situation like this? The truth is, we are all constantly challenged to make tough decisions, and these choices shape our future. How far are you willing to go to preserve what truly matters in your life? If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, drop a comment, and stay tuned for more real cheating stories that will leave you questioning everything.